Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donald Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. It's Donald Jeffries here with you. You're listening to I Protest. We're coming to you from, as the man says, just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as we do every Friday at this time, from 5 to 7 Eastern. Going with the new format again today that so many of you have told me that you like better. It's just me, so we'll just chat, I hope. I see Deborah Will in the chat, who is always first, and Riley's biggest fan. Good to see you here, Deborah. I think Riley's over there. She was down here getting ready for I Protest, so hopefully she's still here. So let's look for some others here, and we're also over on Rumble. I'm going to be checking that chat, and I don't see anybody there yet. So, and of course, people Twitter too. There's Don Lambert. Good to see you, and Peter Seakosh, my main man, the researcher, Hall of Fame researcher, along with Chris Graves, and this is GBGN1. Hello, Donovan. Good to see you. So there's obviously interesting times as we prepare for the apocalypse or whatever's coming down. Peter is tuned in while painting and sheet rocking. Peter's the only researcher I know, excellent researcher, who does all this incredibly great work like that. But he's a great artist as well too. Pat the plumber, good to see you. Okay, so I was just I was going over the headlines. I don't know if I go over the same headlines. I see Dad Guy 24. Good to see you over in Rumble. So remember, we're at Rumble. If you haven't subscribed to the channel over there, please do, and subscribe to mine as well when you're over there, because I put some of my videos up there. Some of the good ones are up there in the past. Sometimes I don't get them up in time, but because a lot of times we have to delete this from YouTube if we make any subversive comments, and it's pretty hard for me not to make subversive comments. So that's just kind of what I do. So I was reading Godlike Productions, which of course is my go-to conspiracy place to go. It's kind of a conspiracy central clearinghouse. And first I was reading about this guy, I just tweeted about it on Twitter, this guy, Santos, it was George Santos, the very brief congressman. I got to tell you, maybe some of you know more than I do. I don't know really anything about him other than it seemed like he was being viciously attacked from the beginning, and I know nothing of his politics, but my spidey sense goes off when someone's attacked like that. And the only things I really heard was that he had lied or exaggerated on his resume, which a lot of us have done that, So I don't think that's that's. It didn't seem to be. It seemed to be like way out of proportion to what he might have done. And they succeeded in ousting him from Congress, and now he's been sentenced for wire fraud or something, and he's got a 7-year prison sentence. So he's being dealt with like a January 6th. So anyway, I think that's anybody wants to chime in on that. Good to see you, Duke Valentino. Hope things are better in Ireland. I'm sure they're probably not, but are they better anywhere? I don't know. What else was I looking at? And I can continue to follow the escapades of Donald Trump. Duke said this one. I play off you guys. So without a guest, because we can talk about anything. So Duke says, "What are your thoughts on Professor Anthony C. Sutton?" I have several of his books. I have Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution. I have Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, and I think I have Wall Street and FDR. I think I have all three of them, and certainly we use them. And Peter was plumbing through them, because I know Peter has them as well. And we used the material from him for American Memory Hole. Sutton's a very interesting. He wrote obviously some. I mean, he's the one that opened my eyes to the fake nature of the Cold War, because there's no question that we built the Soviet Union. And if you read American Memory Hole, you know that there's the big capitalists were all there. And That's right, Peter. We did say like we're all there. You know, some of them were on the ground in Russia for the so-called Russian Revolution. As you know, the Russian Revolution wasn't very Russian. So you know, people like Lev Bronstein, who was from New York City, and that was his real name, and he went over and became Trotsky, the great revolutionary leader. And there were too many people like that. So, but you had the capitalists that were cheering it on, and that was an odd thing to do when these are supposed diehard capitalists, and the communism should be their enemy. But that's not the way it has worked. And Anthony Sutton turned me on to that. And he also wrote, for those, and I know I draw, and I don't know why I do, probably because I question everything. And obviously I've written so much about the Allied atrocities, and I don't think that the World War II was a good war, and I certainly don't think we were the good guys. But Anthony Sutton wrote a book called Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, and I think he pretty well documented that Hitler was not, what some people out there want to say. And in the alternative, and I understand it's a natural impulse to feel, because he had a lot of horrible people lined up against him, FDR and drunk Winston Churchill, and obviously, international Jews, whatever power they had at that time, the banking systems, they all seemed to be lined up against him. But he wasn't just this guy that just, was standing up on a beer hall and making speeches and just, organically becoming this great leader. So I that's a nice myth. I would, maybe we would like to believe that, but unfortunately, it's not the case. He did, certainly there were lots of projects over there he built, including the world's the Autobahn, the fastest, still I think probably the best highway in the world and things like that. But he wasn't. He was not somebody that just came again out of nowhere. And I think that I'm looking at this thing. Duke says, did the top generals know the Cold War was fake? Probably, because according to their own documents, they never had any intention of going to war. I mean, that's what I've always said, is that when, for instance, when when the first Gulf War, when we supposedly had to go to war because Kuwait was in tiny little Kuwait, this little artificial oil oligarchy was formed, and Iraq had every right to complain about it, especially when they met with April Gladsby. There's a name that's been forgotten to history. It was the American ambassador back then under the Bush administration, and she assured him, "Oh no, we're not going to interfere if you guys invade Kuwait." Yeah, but we did just that, and we obviously caused quite a ruckus over it. And I wrote quite a bit about that in history. A lot to be ashamed of in that so-called war, which was really tantamount to Mike Tyson and a bunch of heavyweight fighters fighting a bunch of kindergartners. And we did things like bury soldiers alive, bulldoze them. I mean, just horrible, horrible things, the worst kind of crimes imaginable. And that's why most of my writing is about, is that we have, I don't know what these foreign hobgoblins really do, but we have no business calling out any of them on considering some of the stuff we did. So I've gone into that in my writing, Duke. I think that the people at the top, now there may have been some people, I'm not sure about MacArthur, like when he actually tried to win the Korean War, when he, and Truman fired him. MacArthur had a long history at the top, including, unfortunately, being involved with General Patton, who had some good things about him as well. But MacArthur and Patton were the two people in charge of the U.S. military forces that overran the bonus army after World War I, which was disgraceful. I think a baby was killed, and they trampled over their tents. And these were soldiers from World War I who were promised a bonus, and like the Indians who had so many promises, or the slaves with the 40 acres and a mule, the government, shocking enough, didn't keep their promise. And so they were out there. My boy Huey Long was right there, supporting him. But of course, FDR didn't. And Herbert Hoover obviously didn't as well. But he sent a young Douglas MacArthur, a young Patton. I think Patton was in charge, and MacArthur was the second in command to do that. But MacArthur seemed to believe in the hype that he really, I don't know, in terms of that he was fighting the Soviets. Certainly Joe McCarthy, who, thanks to Peter's fantastic research, he found so much about him that I think we've tried to restore his reputation as a great American hero. But McCarthy certainly seemed to believe that the Soviets were evil, and he was trying to root them out of government. So I think you had people like that who were genuine Cold Warriors who started there. You could even count JFK in his inaugural address before he realized, but there were a lot of well-meaning people who thought that, but again, these were people that most of them fought in World War II, certainly JFK did. And again, they didn't, when you're, I don't mean to minimize the courage of a lot of people in World War II in terms of what they thought they were fighting for freedom. And many of them, I mean, to be, Joe McCarthy was a bomber. They called him, was Canada. Oh, what was his name? God, I can't believe I'm forgetting so many things. But he had a nickname. He killed a lot of people. He was in the cockpit of, and he was a shooter. He shot down lots of enemy planes. So he was a courageous guy, and he thought he was doing good. And it certainly took courage to do that. Certainly took courage to be at Normandy or any places like that. Who you may question the wisdom of it. Why were we there? But once they're there, they're displaying courage. So these guys came out of that war, the ones that survived it, and they had every right to, and they were certainly met with so much worship. And here they were treated better than any soldiers have ever been after any other war. And they helped build the greatest economy the world's ever seen. And when I came along later, 1956, I enjoyed the last vestiges of that, and I've come to understand that was an economy that the world had never seen before. Good to see you, Jennifer Whitehouse. Rain Cry 527. Peter Seakai said the most eye-opening thing to discover was all of FDR's scheme to financially benefit from the Weimar Republic hyperinflation. Yeah, I mean, there were so many things about FDR. You're right. I mean, he was scheming behind to do that. And I try to stress what he did to our citizens, not only Japanese Americans, but German Americans and Italian Americans who were never mentioned in the history books. In fact, I had a guy on, the name escapes me, every name escapes me now, who wrote a great book about FDR's, his crimes and shenanigans, but he didn't know anything. That he just thought it was just Japanese Americans, like most people do. He didn't know. No, they put German Americans and Italian Americans in concentration camps as well. Not as many, but they did. And as we showed in our book, most astounding research is that they, in an early example of asset forfeiture, and really an incredible, extensive example of asset forfeiture, they stole, they took these people's homes and their businesses when they threw them into the concentration camps, and they never gave them back. It's estimated, I think, just from German businesses alone, they stole $5 billion worth of businesses. So if that's not a war crime, I don't know what is. That's your own citizens. They didn't do this to enemy combatants. These were people that were living in America, but they happened to be the wrong ethnicity. Of course, you don't hear the liberals talk about that, the woke people. They should be obviously upset about that, but they're not. Duke says, do you agree with Sutton that the Vietnam War was a bogus war, which was make profit for the military-industrial complex and experiment with new ways of warfare, such as Phoenix? Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. It certainly wasn't legitimate. I mean, again, you may have people that, some of the soldiers that were there, that, the young Oliver Stone and people like that, that thought, they were being patriotic and they thought they were fighting the communists in Vietnam. But no, I don't think anything. Clearly, we've Operation Phoenix we've talked about, and just the horrific things. We don't even know how many civilians were killed, because Vietnam was a real nightmare, because that was a war where you were fighting. We were helping one group of Vietnamese fight another group of Vietnamese. It's not like they could look and say, "Oh, I can identify a South Vietnamese person looks like this as opposed to a North Vietnamese." No, there's no distinguishing characteristics. It's like if you were in America, you wouldn't be able to tell just from the look of us where we came from, the South and the North or whatever, East or West. But so they didn't have the uniforms. So I used to work with a crazy Vietnamese guy back in the day. It was my boss, Trung To. He was a hilarious guy, but he told me so many stories, and it sounded like we're talking about a crazy war, but all kinds of stuff. They were using, little kids and with grenades and just terrible, terrible stuff. But obviously should never have been involved there. But again, I would argue that every war was a bogus war, except for a war of independence, I think. And, I hate war so much, I'm not 100% positive I would have supported that, but I think I would have. Helen Rundell says, thank you for mentioning the Bonus Army debacle. Well, I wrote about it, and, it isn't mentioned very often by anyone. And but you can read about it by War Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776, 1963. Tail Gunner Joe. Yes, thank you, Peter. You're younger than me, so your memory. So I don't know what's going on with my memory. Karen Carpenter, good afternoon. Good to see you, Karen. Peter says the longest sedition trial in U.S. history under FDR. Yeah, absolutely. And Peter found so much evidence of, because I wrote in Crimes and Cover-Ups of what happened to the World War I protesters. Who they were thrown in prison, and then of course that you've heard me talk about that before. That you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That nonsense came out of that. But World War II, I had no idea, and Peter found a lot of great stuff. And you can read American Memory Hall. It's very extensive and what was done to them. But the people that tried to protest, they weren't dealt with. They were dealt with harshly. Let's put it that way. But again, they had set the precedent. Abraham Lincoln, as he had so many other things, he had set the precedent for locking Americans up without trial, without charges. And so it was easy for FDR to throw people in concentration camps and lock up people that didn't want to go along with his war. Duke says, some people still believe in the domino theory as to why they were there, but if we look at the Khmer Rouge, they were propped up by the Americans. Yeah, I mean, the domino theory, again, the domino theory never made sense to me as a young, and again, I was a radical left-winger at the time, so we used to all scoff and make fun of the domino theory. But looking back on it now, if communism was the problem, if communism we had to get rid of communism, then we would have confronted it in the two giant countries that had a communist system. Red China, under Mao Zedong, we never even we couldn't even support the independence of Taiwan later, and then later under George H.W. Bush, it's a shocking cowardice where those Chinese protesters were bulldozed to death and killed in Tiananmen Square. And he did not even have enough courage he barely denounced it. And he would not even withdraw most favored nation status from China. I mean, so we certainly never confronted China on the battlefield. We never did. And we never confronted the Soviet Union. We only confronted them indirectly. That's a trivia question for your history bus. The only world leader that ever took up arms against the Soviet Union was your boy Adolf Hitler, as the only one. We certainly never did, because we fought with the Soviets against Hitler. And then as soon as the war was over, suddenly, as Bob Dylan sang about in the song With God on Our Side, the Russians now, too, have God on their side. As soon as they had, boy, they were right there. We were able to switch this very much like what Orwell talked about in 1984 with Oceania. Oceania's always been at war with Eurasia. Go. Karen, I envy you having your grandson there. I'm sure you're having that. I don't see, and I don't know if people heard, but Rhonda Tate experienced a tragedy. She lost her grandson, I think it's been a couple of weeks ago now. So if people didn't know that, maybe if you have her contact, maybe send her condolences. And she's a wonderful person. And I thought I'd drop that in there in case people didn't know. Duke Valentina said Sutton discovered Trotsky was put up in New York by Wall Street front. Yes, absolutely was. When the February Revolution began with $1 million. Yeah, we allude to that. We talk about that in American Memory Hall. So I owe a debt of gratitude to Anthony Sutton, who was a very, he disappeared for a while. I don't know how long he was gone, but he actually, people wonder what happened to him. Then I think they found him and he died eventually. But yeah, a great man. He produced some work that obviously people like me are still using. All those books were probably written in late 70s, early 80s, I want to say. Peter says he's particularly proud of the World War II protests we discovered in history. It's not spoken of. 16,000 Americans jailed during World War II, only 1,500 pardoned later under Trump. Yeah, so I mean, thanks. At least Jimmy Carter, one of the good things he did grant a blanket amnesty to all the Vietnam War draft evaders, and there were a lot of them, and I would have been one if I had been a bit older, because I was already making plans to go to Canada, and thank goodness the war ended right in the nick of time for me, because I was so worried about I remember my brother got a draft number, and I think he had a high number, but I mean, I was always, so what if I get number one or something? I was very panicky over that, and so thank goodness I didn't have to deal with that. And most were religious objections, as Peter said. And there's my friend O.R. Busy. O.R. Busy over the UK says, greetings from the Heathrow Airport area of West London. Chat room. Good to see you, O.R. And Peter, O.R. is so cool. He'll message me here and there and tell me what time it is in England, and then I'll tell him what time it is here in America 2.0. The crumbling land once known as America the Brave. Duke says, have I seen James Corbett's World War I conspiracy documentary? I have not. No, I have not seen that. I like James Corbett. I tried to get him on my show, but he lives in Japan, and the time doesn't work out for this show. So I understand, like, it'd be in the middle of the night or something. He can't do it. Duke says, didn't Sutton get banned in lecturing in university? I'm pretty sure he did. I mean, most of those guys usually do. I said he disappeared for a while. Karen's talking bragging about her grandson. He's 21 months and starting to say about a lot of words and just so much fun. Peter does know how it is. And Peter's got a little girl, and he's got another baby on the way. So I envy you guys with young kids. It's still, I look back and, even though, my parents were gone by then and everything, and then I was a little older, the 90s, I mean, the 80s were pretty good to me too, but the 90s are my salad days because, my kids were born in 89 and 94, and that was when they were little, and I remember the 90s culture and everything, and I probably wouldn't have liked it if I didn't have kids then, but so there's nothing like having little kids, and people that don't have kids, I don't know, you don't know what you're missing. Let's put it that way. There's nothing like it. I remember my friend, good old friend from the old partying days, and once I had John, and he came over to watch football games. We used to watch football games together, and I had John was a baby, and I had him on my chest, and I was just laying there watching. He says, "Wow, you look like you're happy." I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "Yeah." And I tried to tell him, I said, "This is the greatest feeling in the world." And he said, "Better than sex?" And I said, "Like a million times better than sex." So Duke says he'd recommend that Noam Spirited Puppy. Good to see you here. And Noam Spirited Puppy asked me, did I have a mullet in the 80s done? No, I did not. I hated mullets. Boy, I had basically the same hairdo my entire life, and I just kind of, I thought that's what I liked. And for like, I don't know how many years, from the time I was about 19 until the time I was, I don't know, how old was I? Let's see, 2000, probably in my mid 50s. I had parted my hair in the middle, like most of us did back then. And then eventually it just got too thin, and it just didn't, it just didn't look right anymore. So it broke my heart. That it still does. I still want to do it that way, because I've been parting it, throwing it over to the side now for the last several years, and hanging on to for dear life with what I had. But no, I could not stand the mullet look. I looked back, it just had such a, I don't know, just screamed white trash to me. I don't know how to use that term, but it just had a classless look. And I think when you have those kind of briefly chic kind of styles, I mean, you look at some of the styles, like the balloon pants of the 80s look pretty stupid, the 80s and 90s, and the big hair of the 80s and the 90s. And I just, the women with the hairs piled way up. If you look at it now, you laugh at it. But if you look at, let's say you look at movies from the 1930s, even the 20s, I mean, even the flapper styles don't seem to have aged that badly. But if you look at things from the 30s to the 50s, really the 50s, nobody looks out of style. You look at it and say, oh, you don't think that's a dumb style. It just kind of looks classy. The men's hair was men's hair. So I don't, I love long hair, but I don't know why I would do something like the mullet, where you just kind of shave it, and even worse when it's a rat tail. Oh, God, thank goodness I didn't know anybody that had a rat tail, but I don't know if I would have associated with them or not. I just don't. Let's see here. I'm trying to see. Okay. Yes, Karen's right. The best years of your life. Rain Cries 527 says children are the only worth living for. Well, I don't know if they're the only thing, but they're certainly they certainly give you extra added incentive. And I know the 90s, I look, in many ways, the 90s were kind of like my second childhood. because that's the really cool thing about it, at least for me. I mean, I'm a big kid, so I threw myself head first into my children's lives. I wanted to be involved in everything, and it still went too fast. But I couldn't have really spent more time with them than I did. But it's still, that's why I tell these parents that travel and are too busy. I said, God, I can't imagine how fast your kids' childhoods flew, because mine did, even though I was with them quite a bit. But I would get excited, especially with my son, because he was a boy, and when he was getting the latest VHS tape, which is usually some kind of Batman or Superman thing. I love that stuff. So, or video game, played video games with him. I really enjoyed that, and let's see. Helen Rundell says she's recommending the cyanide pill. Former guest legal. Oh, well, if you guys know Legal Man, try to get a hold of him. I've tried to contact him 2 or 3 times since that show, because he did go over real well, and he was obviously a good guest. I'd like to have him back on, but the first time he said he couldn't make it, and the last couple times he hadn't answered me. So I don't know. Maybe he's seen something about me he doesn't like now, or maybe has he hit it big? Has he been on the bigger shows? A lot of times, once they start getting on the bigger shows, they say, "Oh, yeah, we don't need this guy." On the other hand, Sheriff Mack, his people are asking me to have him on again. So I don't know. But he may be too pro-Trump. But I mean, he's a big name. I don't know why he wants to be in this show. Maybe people think my show is bigger than what it is, I guess. Parachute Pants, yes. Last Dance. It was so. It was, well, I mean, in the 70s, the disco, because you guys know what I think about disco, and I hate disco so much. I mean, I just, if you read my novel, The Unreals, those of you that have read it will know how much I hated disco when I was young, because it still had a chip on my shoulder about it. I used to call people discoers, and I said, stop acting disco. That was a big word with me back then. I hated it. Everything about it. I just thought it was so plastic, and I didn't like the music, but the fashions were terrible. I mean, I had a lime green leisure suit that I think my mom bought me when I was a teenager or something. I wore it a couple times. God, it just, but if you look at some of those 70s things and you see the leisure suits, just look ridiculous. And the blacks with the giant afros, and just really tacky things. And then the 80s had the more of the hairdos, in terms of, and I don't know what kind of really bad fashions they had then or whatever, but again, I didn't like the hair much then. So, okay, we're seeing here. White Wolf, good to see you, White Wolf. White Wolf has disappeared off and on a few times. I will always wonder about him. Good to see you here. And Noam's Spirited Puppy said, you didn't live in the 1970s, you didn't have a powdered blue one. I had a lime green one, yeah, but I saw plenty of powder blue ones. Karen's with me on disco. Remember that song, Funky Town? Oh, just, well, the thing about it is I do have some good memories of it, because this is some of my peak partying days. And if you went to any bar, certainly, parties, because back then, I don't think they have parties anymore. I don't think young people have parties anymore. I don't think they outlaw them, maybe. I don't know. But we used to have a lot of them. I used to go to a lot of parties, and I preferred them to bars. I would always meet people at parties, where I didn't always meet people at bars. But the bars would, if you're going to dance, and of course you go there, it's the way you're going to try to meet people. You're going to have to dance to disco. So, there were Bee Gees, which I always thought the Bee Gees did disco about as well as you could. I liked them better than the other disco acts. Probably say I'm being racist, because they were white, but I think they did it better. And I had always liked the Bee Gees' old music too. So, I danced to Funky Town, and was it Disco Inferno? That one I could kind of tolerate if I was drunk enough. But I would have much rather been dancing to rock and roll, but it didn't happen. By the time New Wave came back, by that time I was kind of settled down. I wasn't partying as much anymore. And 1979 is still one of my favorite years. It's the year I met my wife, and the year that New Wave really hit. And I discovered Elvis Costello and all these other great, Graham Parker, who later has become my friend now. I've met him a couple times here, and in fact, I need to contact him, and hopefully he hasn't written me off, because I think he might have had Trump derangement syndrome. But it was just, God, it was like a breath of fresh air when New Wave hit. Tom Petty and all these people that were part of that era. Let's see. Yes, White Wolf was good to leave the 70s behind. Duke Valentino says, I've looked into the Troubles conflict. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You have to. What is the Troubles conflict? I don't know. White Wolf says he's been working a lot. Well, good to see you, White Wolf. I mean, I'm glad to see you here. Karen says, I lived in the dorm and someone played Funky. I bet. Well, yeah, you would have been. Yeah, that would have been during my time too, and I didn't. Sometimes I think I missed out. That I didn't go. By the time I graduated from high school, I thought I would go to college up to my junior year. I remember going into the they had a special little room there where students could go and look up all the college admission requirements and all the information and stuff. And I'm sure it's much easier now you do it online, but that was the old days. And I remember I looked at Ball State a lot because they had a journalism program. I thought I'd take journalism, but then, my senior year, I was becoming more and more radicalized, and I just thought, the man can't teach me anything. And I wanted to go my own way and circumvent the system. It was probably stupid. I would have made a lot more money. And I did miss out on, I would have been a much more independent person, because if I'd gone away and lived in a dorm room, probably would have had a lot of fun with it, but I never did. I kind of regret that I didn't do it. Peter says, Don, what is your favorite film that is not a Frank Capra film? The 1933 version of King Kong. King Kong, I've been fascinated with since I was a kid with it. I still have King Kong dreams where, Kong is on the loose and we're all running. And it had such a profound impact on me when they used to show King Kong and the Wizard of Oz once a year on television. And it was always a big deal, to watch either one of them. And I loved the Wizard of Oz. Well, that's my top 10. But King Kong, I just think it's so fascinating. It's got, it's such an old-fashioned, and it's kind of a white supremacist film, to tell you the truth. If you look at it now, it's just, the guy that Robert Armstrong played the lead, and his character was Carl Denham, the filmmaker. His character was based on Marion C. Cooper, who was the producer of the film. And Marion C. Cooper and I forget the guys that directed it. The two of the guys put together King Kong. They also made The Most Dangerous Game, which was a great film that they used the same sets for, and a few other things. They didn't do that many films, but in the 1920s, they'd gone to Africa and done these daring things where they get a tiger charging them on camera, and then somebody would shoot it probably or something in those days. But they were very, very courageous, and I think they had spent some time in a Soviet prison camp or something. So they were very anti-communist. They were unlike most people in Hollywood. They were far right-wingers, and it kind of shows in King Kong. But yeah, King Kong is wonderful. From just that we still can't to this day. They've remade King Kong several times, including Peter Jackson's, which I remember going to the theater and being so hyped up about that because I loved Peter Jackson's. I loved the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I thought, well, this is going to be great. But very disappointing. First of all, the casting. I mean, Adrian Brody. It hurts me to look at him. I've never seen any alleged leading man that ugly before. I mean, his nose is like coming out in 3D out of the screen. He's so ugly. Jack Black. I mean, come on, you put Jack Black and those two alone. Man, now I love Naomi Watts. She was lovely to look at, but it ruined it. I mean, it had some great scenes, but the casting ruined that. So it's never been duplicated. The 1976 version, way subpar. And they've made a couple in recent years too that I'll watch them because I watch all that stuff. But the original King Kong has never been, if you look at the stop action technique they used, and still to this day, if I watch it, if I turn that on, it still makes your heart beat a little faster when you see that scene of Kong busting through the gates of the village. And also, when he's chained up in New York City, I mean, and he bursts loose. I mean, those are incredibly dramatic films. So that's my favorite outside of, although the 1931 version of Dracula with Bela Lugosi is right there too, but I think King Kong edges him out. Okay, let's see here. No more afros, rain cry 5 times. Yeah, that's what I would say. I don't understand it, but especially when they had white people with afros, and it's like what? I guess maybe if you couldn't help it, but I don't know. I just didn't like. I don't like curly hair. people tell you with girls, I like straight hair. That's just what I like. I don't know. Whitewood says you got to pay me to live in a dorm. Complete torture. 1979 was a different time. Yes, it was. Again, it was a very good year for me. The Troubles conflict was a 30-year low-intensity war which took place in Northern Ireland. Duke, you know a lot about Northern Ireland. I have to, and somebody else was in the chat too that knew about Ireland. We have to do a show on that where I bring you on and somebody else and we talk about Ireland. I've got mostly Irish blood in me. That's where I feel my heart's at. I have a lot of English too, but I'm definitely on the side of the Irish. I feel for what's happening there, and I think you're because it was somehow Ireland managed to avoid the diversification process of this migrant nonsense for a long time, and now you're experiencing it. Dawn's. I know that was the year you hurt by a car, Dawn. I'm sorry it was a bad year for you, and certainly glad you survived it. To be in this chat room here all these years later. White will spend 3 days in a dorm, worst days of his life. College orientation, just was the time. The video arcades were already getting big then, weren't they? Jennifer White is Abbott and Costello meet the werewolf on Lon Chaney Square. I think he made Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, Jennifer. That's one of definitely my favorite Abbott and Costello film. I love it. It's notable because it's the only other time besides the original Dracula that Bela Lugosi played Dracula, the actual Dracula character. Really, really good. And Lon Chaney was very underrated. Lon Chaney Sr. is one of my favorite actors. I love watching him. He made one talkie and he died right after it. But he's only 40, early 40s. He was such a great actor. But his son was very underrated. And when he played the Wolfman in any of those movies, he was such a tortured soul. He'd be grabbing his hair, he'd get a thick head of hair, and he was perfect for that role. White says you saw Jaws. Yeah, I saw. I wasn't. I've never been impressed with it. I think Spielberg's incredibly overrated, except for Jurassic Park. I love Jurassic Park, but Jaws, and it didn't do that much for me. Again, the 70s, a lot of the culture was terrible. I didn't like a lot of those 70s movies. I thought Star Wars was overrated, to tell you the truth. I mean, I liked it at the time, but I didn't understand how it became this phenomenon. Deborah Wheeler said, what if you get a curly-haired grandchild? You're right, Deborah, I will. Exactly. I would. I like a bald-headed gray, whatever. Yeah, whatever hair, definitely. I've been looking into Operation Gladio. I hear people talk about it a lot. I'm not an expert on it. People maybe can chime in on Gladio. It doesn't sound good. I know Alex Young used to talk about it a lot. Don, you read that? Okay, let's see here. It was a great Defender. I remember Defender, White Wolf. I remember my video games were. Let's see. I liked what was it called? Space Invaders was a big one that you could play a long time, and I had the Atari system. I mean, not the Atari. I had the Intellivision system, and they had a game called Astro Smash that you could play all night. I mean, you could go on forever, and that's when I didn't like what happened to the video game. The video games used to be where you could accumulate and get the high score, and it was cool because you could always try to top yourself, and you could literally play forever, theoretically. But obviously, the video game industry decided that wasn't cost effective, so they started doing this thing where they had these, starting with Super Mario Brothers and things like that, where they would have you go certain levels and beat certain bosses on certain levels, and then the game would be over. So to me, it's like, well, wait a minute. I've got this game. I want to keep playing it. So I like the old games. There's another one called Burger Time that I liked a lot. You keep making burgers. It was a pretty cool game. I have not seen Duel, I don't think, by Steven Spielberg. Peter. Actually, I think Hook was that was a pretty decent film. I think Spielberg made it, but I love Jurassic Park. No Spirited Puppy says, why didn't Abbott have one estate and Costello have another estate? Why did they both own a bungalow in Lake Hamilton together? I did not know that. I'm pretty sure they had separate homes. Abbott, but both of them, and I wrote a little bit about this in my entertainment book on Borrowed Fame, and a lot of this stuff that we end up talking about in the show Entertainment, you can read way more in-depth trivia and stuff. And I communicated with a lot of these, not those old people, but the people that weren't quite that old. I communicated with a lot of them. They had some interesting things to say, but Costello had a very tragic life. He lost I think a 2-year-old boy drowned in a swimming pool, and he went on and did a show the same night or something. That's what troopers these guys were in those days, and died very young of a heart attack, which isn't surprising. He was pretty heavy. And Abbott, I think Abbott was barely existing on Social Security when he died, so they took advantage of a lot of those. But they were the biggest act in the 1940s, at least I think. Martin and Lewis might have overtaken him in the 50s. Duke says, if I looked at other conspiracies outside of America, Operation Gladius is essential. But yeah, I mean, I have in a little bit, but I do confine myself mostly to America because there's so much, there's enough here to keep anyone occupied. And Ryan Evans said, my older brothers had his Burger Time. It was great. I used to love that. You'd shake salt on them. And the early video games were really cool. Asteroids, that's what AJ's on. Yeah, it was Astro Smash, and it was a cool game. Ms. Pac-Man, Don says, yeah, played Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man both. And in television, had a game called Lock and Chase, which was, I think, a superior version of Pac-Man. Oh, okay, Karen. That was Stephen. Oh, yeah, I've seen that, Dennis, where he meets a. I didn't know that was Spielberg. I saw that, a couple of years ago. I had never seen it. That was a really odd film. It was weird. I mean, it was good. It was weird. Yeah, but the guy's kind of no reason. I don't think they really ever explained why the guy's targeting him. Yeah, that was an interesting film. Why they had that property together. No, I think some of these teams, they probably did invest. Maybe it was for a vacation home. I don't know. I didn't know they got along that well because I know they argued quite a bit. But Proves how the Vatican, Duke says, the Vatican banking system, the Freemason, the Mafia work together. Well, certainly those are three groups that have done some nefarious things. See, Gladio-style operations are still happening. Sure, I'm sure they are. Vatican, the banking system, Mafia, the Freemasons are all the same thing, White Wolf says. And White Wolf says the video games were part of Operation Mockingbird. I'm sure, well, that's certainly it kept and what happened with it. Again, I'm way out of that. But the younger people, like my son and people like that became. Some of them became. My son was a pretty big gamer for a while, but nothing. He liked the sports. He loved the Madden. We played Madden quite a bit too, the sports games, and I still say it was the original Nintendo had the best, because I loved hockey, and it had the best hockey game called Blades of Steel, and no subsequent system I don't think has ever been able to match it. And I used to play the hell out of that game. Let's see, over and roll. Okay, Opsum King is there. Good to see you, Dustin D. Helm. He's had dreams about King Kong himself. Maloney says Costello died young. Good to see you. If you're not, we're no longer on Rockfin, so pop on over to Rumble if you can't come to YouTube, or it's also live stream on my Twitter. Yeah, Peter, you do need to probably write a paper on Gladio. I hear that all the time, but again, I can't be an expert on anything. Any thoughts on NFL draft? Broncos went Texas corner, no-fly zone with Surtain, Moss mix. Well, I'm writing the sports book now, and I'm 120 some pages into it, and it's the gist of the book is going to be the racial dynamics in sports, and I'm going to prove conclusively that white men can jump and they can run, and they're being wildly discriminated against sports. You would just be astonished at how misinformed you've been, because people think that they lie about everything, but somehow sports are a meritocracy. They don't lie about it. No, they lie about that a lot too. And as someone who played sports, who coached sports, I saw a little of it then, but it must be. I would not be able to keep, because I would be one of the white players that would mouth off and would have no chance at all. But I mean, I'm telling you, if you show over and over again, look at what they're doing with. If you watch the draft, and I watched it to do research, because it's ridiculous. Because again, it's 80% black all the time. And yet there's still an intimation that it's racist. And so Shadur Sanders, this wildly overrated quarterback, that is Deion Sanders, who's one of the most obnoxious athletes of all time. So admittedly, I can't stand him, so I can't look at it dispassionately. But Shedeur Sanders was hyped up to be this top draft pick, and obviously the NFL teams eventually took a look at him and said he's not that good, which he isn't. And so he wasn't picked in the first round. And geez, it looked like it looked like these people. I mean, every black athlete was going on Twitter. Oh, this is horrible. How can they do this? They're like in mourning because Shedeur Sanders wasn't drafted in the first round. So when you see that kind of stuff, it's there's so much showbiz involved in this. It's definitely not picking the best players, and certainly once you read my book, because what they made the mistake of is that when they started touting these combines and they started touting these numbers. And so the 40-yard dash is all important. And black players tend to generally do disproportionately better running in that straight line 40 yards. So they do tend to dominate that. But there are plenty of whites that do well in it too. And I don't think they counted on that. And then they had the vertical jump. And of course, because these are the people that run sports are real racist. They believe in the stereotype and they think blacks were genetically bred and they're just superior athletes, which is no different than saying they're stupid. I mean, what's the difference? One's a positive stereotype, one's a negative. So, but they have the vertical jump, and you would be shocked to see how well the average white player performs on the vertical jump against the average black player. So, I mean, that's a huge myth that white men can't jump. They do a movie called that. They absolutely can. And my book will show that. But they have something called a relative athletic score, an RAS. And again, they made the mistake of doing this, all these drills, because they just assumed, being racist, that blacks would dominate. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so, but it wasn't until somebody like me coming along to go through the research, and I've had to do this pretty much by myself. Although our friend Chris Graves, hopefully I see him here, he actually started sending me stuff the other day. So he started to try to do some sports research. But I'm finding incredible evidence to back out what I'm saying, because you guys know what I write. I'm not running opinion. This is going to be hard documentation. This is going to be right there in black and white, not to have a pun there, but so it's so that's so any word says Scadaboo looks like third round again, and Scadaboo was not white. He would probably be the second running back drafted after Ashton Genty. So, and Scadaboo, you watch what happens any word. And again, I have in the book how every time, the few times there's been a prominent white running back in college football in the last 20, 25 years, they engineer it so that he goes to the worst team possible. When Toby Gerhardt, who was robbed of the Heisman Trophy, and again, I have all the stats in there, literally was better in every single category than Mark Ingram, who was much slower than him, by the way, but they questioned whether Gerhardt was fast enough to play running back. Not Ingram. But Gerhardt was still picked in the second round, and Ingram was picked in the first round. In every measurable, college production, everything, Gerhardt was superior. So as Sherlock Holmes says, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever's left has to be that. So I've eliminated all this stuff. So, but Gerhardt went to the Vikings when Adrian Peterson was at his peak. So he's guaranteed never played. Happened a couple other times as well. So we'll see. I have a feeling Scadaboo will go somewhere where they have when he has no chance at all to play. I do have the Latrell Sprewell case in the book as well, Peter Sikash. Yes, and Mayor Brown said some people deserve to be, absolutely. And you're seeing with this Austin Metcalf murder, with this where they're trying to make Carmelo Anthony out to be the victim. And then if you saw Austin Metcalf's father, I mean, geez, this is a guy. I mean, you had a J6er. I haven't had him on. I don't think he's one of the guys I had. There's Jake Lang, I think his name. And he's got an overbearing personality. I'm not sure what he's doing. So he's not winning any. He's making any friends or influence people. Duke Palatino says all sports are completely rigged. Yeah, well, they are. You're right. That's true. And I'll have that in there as well. Thank you, Kenneth, and I'm doing fine. Thank you. Duke says, have I read the Illuminatus? I have read the Illuminatus trilogy. Duke, you and I have the same reading material, it seems like. And the Illuminatus trilogy, for those who don't know, was written by Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea. The Eye of the Pyramid, Golden Apple, something of the Dog. I forget the third part, but there were three parts, and Eye of the Pyramid is probably the best, first one. But hugely significant. I read them when I was a teenager, I heard about them, and I was just discovering the Illuminati, just discovering the real big world of conspiracies, and it had a really profound impact on me. And when I wrote my own novel, The Unreals, which you can still find out there, you can definitely see the hand of Illuminatus in there. Balls of which you give a dumb animal to keep them occupied, Deborah Wheeler says. Well, I can't argue with that. I certainly given our animals plenty of balls. The chat outsider's expertise, but when in Rome. Okay, Helen. New Coliseum isn't filled with gladiators, just long-suffering longevities, gluttons for your punch. Well, and again, if sports is now, you look, we see. I mean, it is like the Roman Coliseum, and we're being distracted by that. We're distracted by games. We're distracted by the lottery, and these are, you can even say entertainment, but sports and Orwell talked about them again. The proles, how they were coming to blows over games, and that's what you still get. You still get and that's why people here. I mean, the only reason I'm paying attention, and I admit, I'm like a heroin addict. Sports has been a part of my life forever. The only other thing I wanted to be, as much as a writer, I had two dreams in life. One was to be a writer, a publisher, and that shockingly came true. And I'm just very gratified for that, because most people don't have their career goal, especially something like that, come true. And the other one was to be a Major League Baseball player. And I loved sports. I loved sports my entire life. And even though I've thought they were fixed since the 70s, and I've known they discriminated against whites for almost as long, I still keep going back to it. It's like politics. I don't know why do I keep paying attention to politics? I know that's rigged too, but I wrote a Substack about that. I'm addicted to both of them. Let's see here. John Basculin says they weaponize sports against the average white man. It's all part of the long run, the great replacement. Absolutely. And John, you'll love this book, because what I'm showing in this book is that people think, no, sports are the largest affirmative action DEI employer the world has ever seen. And you've got, I'm writing it from the standpoint, the non-racist standpoint, because the racist believes that this particular group of people are born athletes. I don't think you're born anything. I mean, yeah, born with higher IQ, maybe people are born singers. I can tell you that. You're either a born singer, you can't coach that. And the only thing in sports I've seen where you have to be born something is in baseball, I don't think you can teach somebody to hit. That really, I coached people long enough, kids long enough. You're born hitters, so that's hard. But most of it you can practice, and if you're big enough, of course, you don't even have to have that much ability, as you can see in the games today. But yeah, there's no question about it. It's part of the great replacement. Maybe the first area where they really used it as a great replacement. XNYPH says they recommend antelope pill for publishing. I don't know anything about them. I'll have to jot that down. I know I'm going to have a hard time. I'm going to send this to Skyhorse first, but who knows? I mean, everything I've written is controversial. They published 4 of my books, so we'll see. Good to see you, Geese Busters. Robert Anton Duke says, what I think of Robert Anton Wilson. Well, I have a bunch of his books. I have Cosmic Trigger, Final Secret of the Illuminati, a bunch of books he wrote about the Illuminati that were nonfiction later. And Robert Anton Wilson became good friends with Timothy Leary. It's very suspect. Timothy Leary, was an admitted CIA asset that was a big part of the counterculture, and told people not to trust anybody over 30 when he was already over 30. Tune in, turn on, drop out, and all that nonsense. Very disastrous impact on the culture. So I find, but Wilson had one of his daughter was murdered. I'm not sure if it had any, what the suspicions were, and he believed in cryonic preservation. So I believe he had her brain cryonically preserved, and so he was an interesting guy. But ultimately, yeah, I couldn't come down. I don't think we agreed on a whole lot of stuff, but I admired him. The Albert Pike letter. Which Albert Pike letter? When he predicts the 3 wars or something? I mean, I'm not sure which one you're referring to. Albert Pike certainly was a influential guy, and it's funny how his statue is still standing there in Washington D.C., isn't it? When he was a leader of the Ku Klux Klan, but he was also a 33rd degree Mason, one of the all-time most powerful Masons. I think he wrote a handbook for the Freemasons that is still used today, I think. Noam Spirit Company says, that's just as stupid as that Kendrick Lamar Drake crap. I don't even care. Carmelo bars. Well, you're right. I mean, and again, but I think the reason you're saying it, because you're describing it, is because it's sports has turned into ghetto culture, just like music has. Everything has been ghettoized. So if you watch the NFL draft, these black players come out. One of them had an entirely pink suit on. I don't know where you can find that. And they dress like clowns. Now, I didn't see it this year, but in the last few years, some of them come out wearing what looks like feminine clothing. Some of them have long fingernails. I mean, it's just very bizarre. It's they look so unmasculine. And of course, the bro hugs. This Roger Goodell, the commissioner, who's my age, I think a year younger maybe, and this guy is the biggest cuck on two legs. I mean, he can't wait to get his arms around these big black men and give this bro hug. I mean, and some of them are uncomfortably long. I mean, they were hugging and doing everything but French kissing. It's like, what the hell? What is this? Why is this part of the draft? But it's become a ritual part of the draft, and Goodell seems to enjoy it a little too much. Kenny Finn Power says he hasn't enjoyed the NBA since Kobe retired. Well, certainly it was the NBA was much more enjoyable back then. Well, Whitewood says anybody who was published as an insider, even George Orwell. Well, I don't know, White Wolf. I've had 10 books published. I mean, really only 4 have been published by Skyhorse is the only major publisher I have, and it's a subsidiary of Simon & Schuster. So I don't know. Maybe I'm an insider. They don't pay me like an insider. I can tell you that. I used to see some of my royalty checks. They're embarrassing. Matthew Burns says the country was founded by Freemasons. Well, not all, but there was some, definitely. Noam Spirit of Puppet says the Knights of Templar handed the money for the Vatican before they came to Brown and sank in the shadows. Yeah, I don't study the Jesuits. A lot of the stuff, a lot of stuff they say about a lot of these groups. A lot of what they say about the Jews, they say about the Vatican, the Jesuits, Freemasons, all kind of the same stuff. I mean, and I don't know that any one of them is in charge. I think there's a group above them all that probably orchestrates everything. Duke says, do I think William Cooper was a COINTEL operative? Well, he didn't go out like a COINTEL operative. He went out like any good conspiracy theorist should, at a shootout with the authorities. I mean, I don't know how you could write up the script any better than that. I don't think so. I don't think so. And I know we have a lot of people, including Chris Graves, that admires him very much. Geesebuster says he lives a hard life here. Geesebuster, tell us where you live again. I'm not sure. William Cooper gave the world just enough info to keep them interested. Well, White Wolf, and White Wolf's like a lot of the black pill people. They think everybody is, and maybe they are. Maybe everybody's in dissent, but I don't know. To me, I think if you're shot and you die in a shootout with the authorities, it kind of proves you weren't an insider. But who knows? Maybe it was faked. Karen Carpenter wanted to be I remember you saying that, pro baseball player and then a foreign stranger, yeah. Tony never had the makings of a varsity athlete, Junior Soprano, yeah. Cool. White Wolf says one of his cousin's sons, and I think you mean a Major League Baseball prospect, 100-mile-per-hour fastball. That's pretty good. Well, I thought I was going to finally know a major leaguer. So the same friend I was telling you about, my friend Mike Boy, I used to call him, he's the one that I told, there's nothing it's much better than sex, having a child and holding your own baby. But his son, and Mike was an incredible athlete. He was one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. We used to work with a lot of black guys. He would constantly challenge them to 50-yard dashes, and so he would always win. He was a great natural athlete, but he blew up his knee and couldn't play in college because of that. Great high school running back, and would have suffered the fate of all white running backs probably if he hadn't lived. But his son was a great athlete, great pitcher. And I thought he was going to make the pros. He turned down, I think, a $700,000 offer out of high school by some team because he thought he was going to be a high draft pick. And so I don't know what happened. He's moved away and been gone for a long time. So I don't talk to him very often. But he was bragging up a storm about his son, and it certainly sounded like, which I would have been too, sounded like he was going to make the majors, but something happened and he didn't. So that just shows how hard it is. Peter Sika said, "Who is publishing your sports book?" I don't know, Peter. I haven't tried to get it. I haven't tried to. I have to finish the book first, and then I think I'm going to try to send it to Skyhorse first. I don't think that they'll do it. I don't think the Bear Manor would never do it because it's mostly entertainment. Again, it's because everybody's going to look at this and say the book is racist because I'm defending, I'm showing that white athletes get discriminated against constantly. And that's why I say it's going to be one of a kind. There's no book out there that's close to this, so it'll get attention. But I don't. I have to think it's Skyhorse, or I'll have to. I don't know. Either maybe try to publish it through Lulu again, which I may have to do. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at a lot of the great players never see the pros and are beat to hell and have a career doing injured, leave them debilitated, grabbing for that breath. Excellent. No, and I coached so many great kids, and I knew a lot of great athletes, and none of them ever made it. Right, so it's very, but again, these are all whites too, so that's you have to factor that in. Duke says, "What are my thoughts on the Conor McGregor interview?" I did see that. I thought it was pretty gutsy. For any, again, but he's not American, so it's good to see that some Europeans still have a little bit of I wouldn't say racial pride, racial awareness. But you're not going to see, you will never see any, American white talk about immigration or anything like that. But good for him. I thought it was wonderful. I wish more people would do it because there's no reason for it. And again, it's not being mean or being, bigoted. But there's no reason. What reason is somebody said the other day? Can you imagine the situation? Because I think didn't they elect some kind of? They have like a Pakistani mayor there or something? I mean, it said just can you imagine Pakistan electing an Irish mayor? I mean, let's put this on the other foot. I mean, just imagine China saying, China, we're gonna elect an African president or a Hispanic president or something like that, or an Egyptian president. Obviously, it would never happen, and it's only the white countries that are expected to do it. So this diversity is only one way, and that's why I keep calling it out. Duke says, was it a free Masonic lodge in Dublin? Yeah. And I'm surprised they have that many free Masonic lodges over in Ireland, because that was, the Catholics they used to forbid parishioners to become Freemasons, and the Freemasons didn't want Catholics. They were arch enemies. Peter says, Timothy Leary is Winona Ryder's godfather. I did not know that. Wow, that's interesting. The bro hugs are all over Australian rugby league football. Oink, oink, says. Well, I'm sure it's everywhere. And that's the thing and it's just, I don't know. I don't say it's gay, but I mean, I don't know. We used to give each other, I'm old enough to remember low fives. Just give me five, man. And then the high fives, well, that was really cool. High fives or something. But I don't understand the hugs. And, people used to slap each other in the ass, I guess. You can't, I guess you can still do that if you're guys. I don't know. But, Gnome Spirited Puppy says, how many rugby and soccer players, some of the most conditioned athletes on the planet, succumb to myocarditis because of a certain, exactly. And they are some of the most conditioned people. And that's why I've said that, if I was, if the NFL was really going after the best players, you're not going to get any tougher than rugby players. I mean, when I used to go to parties a lot, I knew this. I never played rugby. I'm way too big a pussy for that, but I would do that. But I know a lot of these guys that did, and they gave the best college parties. But again, I didn't go to college, but I went to a lot of college parties. And they were fraternities, so we went to a lot of fraternity parties with nice sorority girls there. And these guys, they didn't see that type of thing. Obviously, were, but if you're playing football without pads, and the NFL has gone after a couple rugby players, but most of the time when they go after them, they find the ones that aren't white, because they got to keep up the non-white aspect of the league. So yeah, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be recruiting those guys. The few they have, they didn't give any kind of a chance to. The Chiefs drafted one last year, was big and fast, and they never gave him a chance to play. Orwell and Huxley were obvious insiders, Duke says. Well, yeah, Huxley definitely was, but Orwell, again, I don't know why so many people think it's impossible for an insider to turn. And I think Orwell turned. I mean, 1984 was an expose of what he thought was the inside. Yeah, he was an insider. He was a socialist, and he, Animal Farm was a courageous book because it was an expose of something that he thought was the perfect system. And then 1984, he went beyond that. But I mean, Orwell died under, I think, suspicious circumstances. I think he was 46 years old. He died right before 1984 was published, so he had that dramatic sense of timing. So my radar always goes up like that. Kenneth in Power says, you want some cringe hugs? Have Billy Ray show you a clip of Tony Khan at AEW Wrestling Media Scrum. You'll have a laugh. Yeah. I actually watched that WrestleMania last week, and I watched some of it because my son got it, and an old friend came over and we watched it. I was texting Billy Ray back because he loves that stuff. I sit there and shake. But hey, those guys are great athletes. It's all fake, but they are great athletes. They have very short life expectancies because they do throw themselves around. Yes, it's scripted, but those guys, I think they're better athletes than certainly the average NFL or NBA player, I believe. What says by the big publisher? Well, that's true, but I mean, I guess Skyhorse isn't a big publisher, but they're a subsidiary of Simon & Schuster, which is. Peter says, I think the Albert Pike statue was torn down in 20. Was it torn down? I didn't think it was. Okay, I thought they. Duke says he didn't think that was the one in Washington. Yeah, I thought it was there. I don't know. Yes, Numb Spirit to come. Bill Cooper called AJ. That's right. So White Wolf said it. So I don't know what you think there because Bill Cooper called Alex Jones. So I know you don't think he's legitimate either. And they murdered the man in his own backyard. What do you think about Chuck? Yeah. Yes, Tony is a #1 fan. Well, shootout, exact. But I'm saying he died. He was killed in his own property. But I mean, they basically attacked it. I think he did try to defend himself. Any word says another white guy is arguably the best thing is falling. Jack Sawyer? Who's Jack Sawyer? I don't recognize that name anywhere. What position does he play? But there's a lot of them out there. Do you think Me Too is a social engineering psyop? Duke says, oh, absolutely. What happened to it? I mean, and again, it was like, it's one of those feel-good things where almost every woman was coming out. And I guess, the women in the chat room can tell me, but I mean, I don't know. I just can't conceive of abusing women, but apparently lots of men have, because I hear some of these people that, I mean, did any of you not have this happen to you? I don't know. So it's hard for me because I don't want to think that men are that, but I know men can be ridiculous, yes, but I never saw them really do that. But yeah, I mean, but who am I to know? Nobody's harassing me, so I don't know. But it came and went pretty well. And Weinstein went to prison if he really went to prison. But what happened to all the other celebrities? A lot of them were accused of doing something. Nothing happened to them, as far as I know. Okay, let's see. Oh, Geesebusters, I guess, is in Great Britain. Okay. White tight ends going right. Yeah, anywhere. That's the position they let the whites play there. That's a lot of the great athletes are there. Catherine Z, good to see you here. Anything MSN jumps on, think the social side. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's what I said about the Austin Metcalf Carmelo Anthony thing is why is it getting so much attention? I mean, that sets off my radar. Okay, I'll get over here and rumble. I didn't mean to ignore you guys. We got some people here. Petal 3104 says he's mourning the Pope here in Argentina. Yeah, that was something right after J.D. Vance visited him. I don't know. That's 88's not that old for a pope. I mean, popes tend to live long. Just kidding. I don't hear anyone too concerned. Well, I mean, did they ever establish whether that pope was a Catholic? But I can tell you what you're probably going to get. I thought you were going to get last time. I think you're going to get your first DEI pope. I think they're going to find a black pope. I don't make predictions, but I think that's a pretty good, reasonable one. Oh, and Pitt, right? He says the black cat. Yes, exactly. I think so. Yeah, they do have some kind of prophecy saying that, and people will try to say that probably. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, give it a thumbs up, guys. Come on, let's get some thumbs up here so it looks like people are watching it. Appreciate it. So let's get some likes in there. Noam Spirited Puppy said he was killed by multiple shots before he made it inside. Okay, I had always heard it was like a standoff, but okay, well that's even worse, I guess. The officers were lucky to get him because he kept the A447. Yeah. Well, there again, and again, why were they shooting him? Because he was a renegade talk show host, and again, people don't. But to the average person, they would look at what he was talking about and what he represented. Oh, yeah, and they don't care. That's the problem, is that Americans don't care if they think people are kooky or wacko. They don't care that the police or the authorities kill them. I mean, I don't care what you are. You have the right to have people just kill you? It's ridiculous. Any word says Shannon Sharp likes it. Well, yeah, and that's a couple good things are happening. One is the Shadur Sanders not getting drafted. That makes it a win for the draft. Just hopefully we can see Deion Sanders melt down and show his absurd, the extent of his absurd ego. And Shannon Sharp, again, this is a clown who has the impulse control of a 10-year-old. He's a giant, and to me, the guy looks like Killer Croc. Have you seen, Killer Croc from Batman? I mean, he's got jaws that look like he could chomp a giant animal in half. But this guy's a cretin. He's had allegations. Jason Whitlock, you guys know I like him, the Black Fearless podcaster, only one that tells the truth about plaid culture, other than me, to my limited platform. He's been talking about Sharp for a long time, harassing women, abusing them. Now he's finally got somebody, and he's got, this woman, 19 years old, obviously mentally deranged. I mean, she's 19 years old, and she's a 50-some-year-old guy, but clearly has problems. And they've released this tape. If you heard the audio tape where she's, she sounds so, it's pathetic, but it's real. I think I heard that Sharp resigned, so couldn't happen to a nicer person. Hopefully it pokes some holes and gives them a sense of humility. Him and Deion both. Oink Oink says the Irish Prime Minister was or is a homosexual. Well, that's nothing nowadays, is it? I mean, probably a feather in his cap, I guess, if he runs. Duke says Dublin is the oldest continuous Freemason lodge in the world. I did not know that. You had to be an Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Yeah, again, yeah. I mean, because Catholics weren't allowed to. Conor McGregor wanted the military to enforce lockdowns in Ireland. I didn't know that. Well, again, yeah, nobody's just. You're not going to find these guys being right on every issue, but it took some courage to talk out about the non-white immigration into a white country. Nobody does that. Nobody's doing it. Yeah, Goodell gets relentlessly booed every time. And I think that's part of the thing. I think that's the act, and he seems to love it. He embraces it. I mean, he's a total cock. So why wouldn't he? Of course he would enjoy getting booed. But yeah, the guy's a disgrace. If you watch what he was doing with Snoop Dogg, he was sitting with him at some kind of thing, and he was trying to say fashizzle and all, Snoop Dogg's nonsensical, gibberish that he talks. And because again, the guy's a year younger than me. It's just I don't know how you have any kind of self-respect. No, Riley, get out of there. Sorry, Riley, my dog's trying to get the sump pump room. Hey, sit down and listen to the show. You're supposed to be the number one fan here. Okay, Noam Spirited Puppy doesn't like McGregor. Like Andrew Tate. Okay, doesn't like Andrew Tate either. Yeah, well, again, Andrew Tate's got a lot of disturbing things with women. But 1984 was a series of spoiler alerts. White, that's what it's looking like, White Wolf. Suk says most celebrities aren't enrolled. Who knows? I mean, at this point, there's a whole subset. And I had one guy. I don't know what happened to him. He was one of the most regular posters, commentators on my Substack articles. Heretic Drummer, I think his name was, for years, and he's just disappeared. But he was a huge believer in this thing that that all the trannies are everywhere. Like all the males are really women and the women are really men. They're famous. I don't know. It gets me when they started saying Marilyn Monroe is really a man. I mean, come on. I find that a little hard to believe. They did a wonderful job, but that's the truth on her. Andrew Tate for PM. Yeah, well, and that's the thing is because we don't have and Andrew Tate isn't white. He's half white, but he kind of they think of him as white. But when you lack masculine role models and they're all cucked down and beta and they're subservient to women, and they worship the matriarchy, then you're probably going to get you're going to get people like Trump, who's obviously as flawed as it gets, or Andrew Tate, who probably abused women. I don't know if there's actually evidence against, but he certainly said some despicable things. Let's see, Masonic lodges are all around. I didn't know that. No, Ireland ceased to be Catholic in the 1920s. The Vatican ceased to be Catholic after that. Well, yeah, Vatican too. A lot of people think you should go to Mel Gibson's church, White Wolf. that's. I think Mel and his dad, Hutton Gibson, and I think I've told this story before. Hutton Gibson was a brilliant man. He just died a few years ago. I think he lived to be 104 or something ridiculous like that. But he was. I was on his mailing list, and he answered me a few times. But this guy he knew everything, but he was obsessed with the Catholic Church. He knew more about White Wolf and him could have some great conversations. He was an expert on Catholicism, and he basically thought every pope was the Antichrist or a demon or something since Vatican II. He was really, really interesting guy. Duke says, Me Too has permanently changed the culture. Absolutely. And I don't know. When I was young, I was very fortunate in a lot of things, but I never had to worry about, and I was always, bold about trying to talk to women most of the time. I mean, sometimes I'd check it out. She was exceptionally beautiful, intimidating or something, but you can't do that now. I don't know what guys do now because there's no such thing as like making small talk. It all can be interpreted by whatever the woman, and she has all the power. It can be interpreted as harassment. What are you talking to me for? Do I know you? There's no sense of getting to know people, even if you're not interested in them romantically. How do you make friends today? Because theoretically, say he's harassing me. I don't know this guy. How do you make friends? How do you meet people? We've created. I don't know if that's just Me Too, but it's really, it's really, I think a sad situation, and I feel so bad with for any young person that's trying to navigate the system, especially any young male. Twisted Pistol says JFK was a great white football. Well, JFK he had a bad back. Teddy, I think, was a better football player. And Bob, they all played football. They all loved playing football. I don't know how great they were, but they certainly. Teddy actually played a varsity at Harvard, and I think he caught a touchdown pass in the Harvard-Yale game, which is he considered one of his greatest accomplishments because it was such a competition between the Ivy Leagues, elites. Gnome Spirit, puppy said he didn't think Bill Cosby did anything other than want to buy a major broadcast and he can have a black man in possession of that. Well, I don't know if it was that, but I mean, I don't think it's any accident that Bill Cosby was the only black entertainment figure that really spoke out strongly against the ghetto culture. And his son died very mysteriously, very suspiciously. I think he was like changing a tire on the side of the road or something. He got run over and wasn't much on that. That's what I heard about it, but it's obviously tragic, but sounded pretty suspicious. And then wasn't long after that when suddenly you had 800 women or whatever coming out and say, Bill Cosby gave him wine or drugged him or whatever, and raped him. So I don't know. If he did that, obviously it's terrible, and it's not impossible that he would have done it, but I just think the fact that he was the only one talking out about that, probably not a coincidence. Jacob, good to see you, buddy. Jacob, I want to have Jacob on the show at some point. Jacob, you got to let me know when you can ever do that, because Jacob used to tell me about trying to get a job and stuff and how they would lie about things, and I know other young people that tell me that as well. But I'd like to have a show about that. Catherine Z says, yeah, why is the Metcalf getting spotlight? Other things ignored. Gnome Spirit Puppet said, John B. Well, I've been on John B. Wells' show, I think 3 times. He hasn't asked me for a long time, but I was on there before. that he heard his classroom cheer when JFK was assassinated because a lot of people hated the man because he was Irish. Oh, absolutely. A lot of people tell that story, especially in Texas. Jacqueline, good. And I can't tell you, for some reason, I just get more excited when people are listening or watching in other parts of the world. That's the great thing about the internet. You can have a humble little podcast like that, and you're not going to get the ratings you would get on a radio show, but everybody listening on a radio show, terrestrial radio show, unless you're, broadcast simulcast over the night, you're going to have just your listening area. So you might become a local celebrity or something because it's your neighbors listening. But the internet, you can be listening anywhere. So Jacqueline from Cumbria, England. That's wonderful to know you're listening over there. And I know I have people other places too that are listening. And I know there's a woman in Germany that listens. It's wonderful. So it's great to have you here. Well, of course, Duke says they thought Anthony was kooky. They think anybody that's telling them the truth is kooky. They've been conditioned to think that. They would think I'm a wacko. I mean, if somehow I get this sports book published, and let's say I get ESPN's attention, that they should theoretically. Now, they may want to, but they don't know me. And I'm not going to be, I'm not going to allow myself to be subjected to that. But they think they might be able to make a fool of me, and that's not going to work with me. Because I'm not going to go emotional on them, and I'm going to say, look, explain this. Explain why faster, more productive, bigger players are constantly looked over for smaller, slower, less productive players. And it happens all the time. Deion Sanders had lost 2 toes. I didn't hear that twisted pistol. I didn't know that. He was a hell of a fast runner. I'll give him that. Whitewood says the springs. Well, actually, grass fields grow and there are no bees. You're right. I have not seen bees for a while. Certainly a lot less than you see. And lightning bugs. What the hell happened to lightning bugs? I used to love lightning bugs as a kid. You never see them anymore. But this year, I've actually seen a few bees hovering around. What do I think about the Titanic, Duke, and chemtrails? Well, the Titanic, that was one of my non-conspiratorial interests. And, when the movie came out in 98, and my next door neighbor here, still my next door neighbor, he was obsessed with the Titanic. And so we went and saw, was it Barrett? Whatever the guy was that raised the Titanic. We went and met him at a book signing at Baltimore Harbor, and certainly enjoyed the Titanic movie and read books about the Titanic. I was up there, but I didn't know there were any conspiracy theories about it until later when I heard about it. I didn't even know that John Jacob Astor, whoever it was, that died. And certainly the first class that was very class conscious, where they put all the poor people in steerage, as they called them, which were the poor people, the Irish immigrants there. They pretty much all died. But the first class passengers should have all made it out. I don't know how Astor didn't, but he was one of the critics of the Federal Reserve, which was about to be born. So that's and there's also a theory that it was actually the other ship, its sister ship that sunk. So there's a lot of theories there, but it's interesting stuff, obviously. And you had the last survivor of the Titanic probably died about 10 years ago. So they were alive for a couple of them. I think she was a baby or something, but at the time. Chemtrails, asking chemtrails obviously are very real, and there's no question about that. And Bobby Kennedy alludes to them, so maybe maybe we'll get something done. Deborah Willis says a good spring where I am, butterflies and birds, lots of. Well, our flowers our azaleas are certainly blooming very nicely out front. I was looking at them today; they're looking gorgeous. And again, anybody, how you can't believe in God? I don't know. To me, spring and fall both just bring out. It's just magic, to see things, to think you can, stick a little seed in the earth and all these great things come from it. It's amazing. Or these flowers can come up, or these bushes and things can last for years, or sometimes take years to grow. I think it's just amazing. I don't know how anybody can look at that and think it's some kind of random. Duke says, "What is my dog's name?" My dog's name is Riley. Most of the people know my dog's name is Riley. She's a golden retriever, pure breed. Oh, Hope and Despair says Hope and Despair knows. Same as my daughter Riley. Yeah, my daughter named her because she was obsessed with the Jonas Brothers at that time, and one of the Jonas Brothers had just had a dog and named it Riley. So that's where we got the name Riley. But has researching into the spirit affected my mental health? Duke says, well, lots of people would probably say it has. It can make you go crazy. I've tried to maintain my sanity to some degree, but and Duke says, "Oh, I looked into the first ladies being trans. Okay, so you're one of the trans. No, I have not done that. Although, certainly, they used to have a first ladies. Why I liked it, I don't know. Maybe I'm gay. I don't know. But I used to one of the most elaborate things they used to have at the Smithsonian. They don't anymore. Was the first ladies exhibit, and you could walk through and you could see all they're very lifelike, mannequins or replicas of wax figures of the first ladies with the actual dresses they wore. And I just remember, as a young guy going, of course, I'm just looking and saying, I was the hottest first ladies. That's what I'm looking at. And I was like, God, there was almost no hot first ladies. Grace Coolidge, Mrs. Coolidge was pretty attractive. And Grover Cleveland had of all people, he had a very creepy, and nowadays they'd probably arrest him as a pedophile, but he helped raise this little girl, Frances. And then when she got 18, he just married her. And so they had the only wedding they've ever had in the White House. And I think when they had a child, I think that's where the baby Ruth came from, the candy bar, because I think they named her Ruth. Well, I remember some trivia there, but so I remember just thinking, God, some of these, because these are presidents. You think these are very successful people. You think I guess they didn't have trophy wives in those days. But I don't know that any of them look trans to me, Duke. I don't know, but that conspiracy is beyond. Yeah, White Wolf said heretic drummer worshipped the Hitler. I don't know what happened to him. I hope nothing happened because I know he loved my writing, and I don't think anything's changed. So I don't know. Whenever I lose like a familiar name, I wonder, Hope and Despair says, oh yeah, Pink the artist. Okay, that's a masculine looking woman. Yeah, I can believe that. And Serena Williams, sure, absolutely. White Wolf says Hutton Gibson, because you've got me, I don't know what a Savaticus or whatever it is. He knew nothing about Our Lady. I'm surprised he didn't know about Our Lady of Fatima because he seemed to know everything about the Catholic Church. Okay. Yeah, online dating stuff, Catherine said. Yeah, that's what they do now. And again, I don't know how I just but all young people do. That's what you do. And I just think you have to get to know people in the flesh, and not to anything intended there, but and I don't know how you get to do that now. So I know my last 5 years when I was moved to another data center before they finally fired me, but I'm a gregarious guy and I like to try to talk to everybody, and I almost got in trouble a couple times. Just because as I'm walking around, a lot of free time in IT typically, and I tried to make conversations with, and a few of the women complained, and I'm thinking, God, especially one of them, I said I wanted to, but I didn't want her feelings. I said, do you really think I was hitting on you? Really? I mean, I know I'm old, but just you give me a little more credit than that, but I don't know. I don't know how people do it now. I really don't, because if they can take just conversation about just that you make conversation with anybody and make that into something that's not allowed on the job, again, it takes away an essential part, I think, of human intercourse. Not to human intercourse is a real thing, not sexual intercourse. Human intercourse, but you have to have social interaction. I think it's important. Chris Donaldson said, "Good to see you." They went after Cosby. Yeah. 6 UFC fighters have had blood clots since 2021. One died over. I didn't know that. Well, I don't know how the football and basketball players and baseball. That's not happening here. The one guy, Damar Hamlin, I wrote some Substack about it. Still very strange what happened to him when he appeared to drop dead on the football field. I guess it's been a couple of years ago now, and he's back playing supposedly. I don't know. The whole people can read my Substack about that. Duke says dating is an absolute minefield. You can easily get your life ruined for no reason if you're just trying to be friendly. Yeah, I mean, especially you have somebody. Look, I'm a friendly guy. What you see in here, this is how I am. And when I don't really drink anymore, but when I do drink, I get even friendlier. So I'm never looking for trouble. Even when I'm bitching and complaining and criticizing about people, I'm not looking for trouble. And so I'm trying to be friendly with everybody. So, I mean, I might, talk to women that I would never have any interest in and just be friendly with them. Might even kind of flirt. That's just what I am. That's my personality. But you can't do that anymore. So I don't know. I guess you can't be friendly. I don't. It says a lot about our world. And I don't think it says any good. Jacob says he needs to call me. Sure. Message me, brother. Karen says the spring has been insane there. Yeah. I'm not sure I understand. Catherine says, but Whoopi not seen Cookie? I don't know what that means. Chris Bucket says, hey, Don, are we going to see Leonardo Joni and Junior? Well, thanks for opening the door to me on that, Chris. I've discovered her now, and boy, I've got a new favorite. She's just fantastic. I love her work, and she's but again, I'm sounding like White Wolf or something. I'm a little suspicious how she's allowed to say all that stuff, but she is proud to be a racist and always talks about blacks and Jews and everything, trans, all this stuff, and banned everywhere. But she's really good. And, I don't laugh at too many female comedians, Granny Clampett, and Gilda Radner, not too many of Catherine O'Hara, but she is really, really funny. And it's a material, and it shows the material it's a gold mine there, because this woke nonsense, our culture, it's so easily parodied, and anybody could come up with a great act with it, doing it. But I haven't, she answered me right away, Chris, I think, but then you kind of burst my bubble saying that her Twitter had been hacked, and I saw in the interview she said that. So I don't know, because she's been posting stuff, and it sounds like her on Twitter. So I don't know. I'll try messaging her at some point, but I would certainly be honored if she came on. Geesebuster said they have to be club members to make the pro teams and have acting. He says, well, yeah, probably. You could be right there. Catherine Z says Stacey Abrams still gets her $2 million grant. Yeah, well, $2 billion. Yeah, what has been done? Again, to look about what's going on with the Doge. It's disappeared. I don't even know if Elon Musk is still there. Did he quit? I don't know. I'm not sure what's really going on there. And the things they discovered would happen. Something like Stacey Abrams, you really got that. Okay, then I guess it's not illegal for her to have gotten that, but who gave it to her? Make her give it back. I just, that kind of stuff, I don't understand it. Chris Buchan says, yeah, Astor was on the Titanic. He was. Jacob says, no lightning bugs because they lay their larvae in dead leaves and everyone is obsessed with lawn care. Leave the leaves. Good point. I just know that was, one of the essential memories I have of childhood, is sitting out front, and watching, watching the lightning bugs buzz around, always running around and catching them. I don't know why, and shaking them, and then just watching them, but peeking through your fingers and seeing them. And sometimes you feel bad because their little lightning thing would come off and smear your hand. But I miss them, because they were easy to catch, and they were just essential as lining up there. That was part of summer, and but not there. Houghton Spare says I've had quite a few ladybugs. Look, I don't see too many of them either. Now we live in a very unusual place. I'm very lucky to have the neighborhood I have, because there's a lot of woods behind us, and it's hard to back up the woodland anymore. And it's not that old of a house, and I just haven't developed it, thank goodness. But so we get deer coming in the yard all the time. We got a fox that pretty much has moved into the backyard because her and him, or whatever the fox is, and Riley, my dog, are obsessed with each other. So I think he or she knows Riley lives here. So she's the other day we caught her. She was out. We have a playground set that the kids use when they're real little, and it's really elaborate and has a cool little treehouse kind of thing up there, like a little fort for little kids. And Riley, when we got her, she used to run up there and hang out there, and she would even come down the slide a couple times. But the other day we saw the ridiculous fox up there. What? The fox is not supposed to be up there. So So we get nature like that. It's fantastic. When I grew up behind my house when I was a kid, we had 250 acres worth of woods behind us, and I never saw a deer or anything like that because they had an environment where they could hide. They didn't want to be near people. But now we've skimmed out their woodlands, and so they have to sometimes. When you see them running across the road, I never used to see deer running across the road. My wife hit one a while back because they ran across her right in front of the car. Chris Bucket says, yeah, they wanted to ask her that because, he was trying to stop. Yeah, there was the Olympic. Yes, that was a twin sister thing. Yeah, that's as good a theory as any because somebody like John Jacob Astor should have been on the first lifeboat. He was probably the richest man on board there. Let's see. Bobby is a Trojan horse. I guess you mean Bobby Kennedy. Maybe so. I don't know. I see what happens. Kennedy said Woody Harrelson included him in on chemtrails over 10 years ago. So, okay, yeah. And Woody Harrelson's, again, I don't know if he just seems like a guy that likes to get high all the time, but he's obviously believes in some of this stuff. But basketball and says something was actually the Olympic, which and they set up to switch the boats to write off insurance. Yeah, that's the theory. Karen Carpenter likes Steve Garvey. I remember Steve Garvey. He's one, and I write a lot about the Hall of Fame in the book too. And there's again, that's another all the white players that aren't in the Hall of Fame that have better credentials than some of the blacks that do. So we'll go over all that. It's gonna piss off the entire sports world, but they can't. I use numbers. I don't say just I think this guy was better. I say, well, this is what this guy did. This is what this guy did. I use a lot of player A, player B comparisons, and people can judge for themselves. So Kim, what can we see here? Karen said we saw an outfit Prince wore at a casino. He was so tiny. And Prince is another one. He was okay in the 80s, but I think I really started noticing. I mean, I notice everything, but I notice again the ghettoized culture. When any black celebrity dies, they pay so much more attention to it. When Prince died, I remember so much attention on social media, and that didn't happen when Glenn Frey died for the Eagles, and the Eagles had way more hits than Prince had. And so I thought, that's a comparison. Tom Petty didn't get anywhere near the and again, Prince, I don't get it. Not my cup of tea. Raspberry Beret or Little Red Corvette. I mean, I think there've been white guys saying that they would just call them stupid pop songs, but I don't know, probably pissing people off with that. But I didn't understand Michael Jackson either. I didn't get it. Duke says, do you think a lot of celebrities fake their death like Prince, Bowie, and Michael? Well, Michael Jackson, I don't know. A lot of people think he was maybe killed by the Illuminati. I don't know. Prince, Bowie, I don't know. Bowie, I did write about it on Bar of Fame, where I think they don't know his ashes were scattered in some secret location. I don't think anybody knows. Maybe even his family. Karen Carpenter's big baseball junkies. I like Giants gear. Catherine says, hard to talk to people in general, few kindred spirits. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's conversation. I mean, I don't have any problem because I can easily talk about things without alluding to any conspiracies. I mean, I'm very opinionated, but I can talk about it is harder for me because I'm going to usually give my opinions about music or films or whatever like that. But I can sports, but I can have a conversation. I'll talk hippos with you. Hippos are one of my great non-conspiratorial interests. I do have interest to be outside this world. Let's see here. It creates tension. Yes, all the world's a state says it creates tension and distrust in the workplace as well. He told a coworker her dress looked nice and she complained to the manager. I mean, again, and I wrote an article about this on it. You're never going to see a guy, I don't care who the woman is, it doesn't have to be a hot young chick. If anybody, any male or female, anybody came up and told you, hey, I like your haircut. Oh, I like that shirt. I like your pants. There's not a man on planet Earth that would go complain about that. They would all be complimented. And if the girl was good, if it was a good looking girl, they'd probably, irrationally believe, oh, she must really be into me or something. But nobody would complain about it. And that's the poisonous thing that they've done to women. It's just, why would you be offended by a compliment? I don't understand that. It's crazy. Jerry Gawrowski says, I'm not following the no flirting laws. Well, me either, but I just, thank goodness, it's a good thing the working world and the workplace and I split up. It wasn't an amicable divorce, but it's a good thing it happened because I would not be getting along there. No way. Ireland was pro lockdown and pro vax. The entire world was, Duke. Let's see. Okay, Karen and Geesebusters are talking about the Giants. Okay, let's see here. I've not been in a game for a long time either. I did watch the Caps game. I used to be a huge hockey fan, so I watched them beat Montreal the other day. It was kind of cool. I hadn't seen it for a while. I don't know why I got away from hockey. I loved it so much, but I don't know. Geesebusters think games are played by the results of gambling. Well, certainly. Karen says she's a recovered baseball junkie. Me too. Baseball was my favorite sport. I said I wanted to be a baseball player, and I know old baseball inside out, and I know all the statistics and everything. I used to, before I really got in the conspiracy world, that was when I was a kid. I just read. God, I read. When I wasn't playing baseball, I was reading at baseball. I just loved it. Collecting baseball cards, which I still have. I got to do something with them at some point, like my comic books. Great part of my fortune. Let's see. Twisted Pistol says Alex Jones just shut down Nick Fuentes for calling out J.D. Vance. Well, Alex Jones is going to shut down anybody that calls down anybody that has to do with the Trump administration. I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, I can't. And he actually acts like he thinks that people don't think he's excessively pro-Trump. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Duke says he's heard about men getting fired for complimenting women tonight. Yeah, you haven't. That's why I said I don't understand it. I don't know why, but what can we do? This is a problem. These are the people that are running things now, and it's HR departments. HR departments are full of women, and they're full of liberal women, and they're the ones that are making these rules. And again, it's very toxic and poisonous, and it's like everything else, whether it's racial division or certainly gender. I mean, if you're going to have gender division, I mean, how much more? But that's why you have the plummeting birth rates, why you have people not getting married, and we have 40, 50-year-old virgins now. The stuff and you're going to see more of that. And that appears to be what they want. They don't want us together. Certainly don't want us procreating because they're eugenicists. Ovechkin broke Gretzky's. Yes, he did. Ryan, and it was. I mean, he's a Cap, so it was. I can understand it, but it was a little sad because Gretzky was, just so incredible, and it just shows what longevity will do. Ovechkin's just been consistent for a long time. Let's see, did I miss anything over here? Let's see what we have over here in Rumble. Come on, guys, let's see some thumbs up if you're watching on Rumble or if you're watching on YouTube. Let's see some thumbs ups here. Let's see. I haven't seen stars in the sky and who knows how long down here because of all the chemtrail. This guy's are hazy. That's pretty bad if you can't see this. Well, that's that's been the case, I think, everywhere but the desert probably for a long time. I'm not sure who. Okay, let's see. Jim Street, Karen talks about it. Well, they have these sports gambling experts. And of course, they're not, what are their track records? Your track record would have to be incredible for anybody to pay you for it. Anybody that thinks, even if sports weren't fixed, to, gamble like on a regular season baseball game when you have 162 games. I mean, it's like, who could possibly predict who's going to win that? Or, really anything except football. But even football, on any given Sunday nonsense where they can explain the crazy upsets. But again, if these things were fixed, which I think they are, then if you have the mob or whoever's running things for that, it's another form of insider trading. If you know when the stock market's going to go up and down, you have insider knowledge, so it's easy to make money. It's the same way if you know who's going to win or lose a game, or what the point spread's going to be, you have insider knowledge. Ryan even says, good book, video on the fix it sports. Yeah, I have, Ryan, I've had that author, The Fix Is In, Brian Toohey. He beat me to it. I've had him on my show. It's been, I don't know how many years ago. I should probably have him on again if I can get a hold of him. I think his work schedule is hard for him, but he was on once. And he got the ESPN treatment. I remember, like, it looked like the football players. Luckily, he was doing it, and I'd be doing it from a remote location too, so I could talk a little bolder. But some of these guys, yeah, they look like they wanted to, assault him, and obviously they're 3 times his size. And but yeah, I mean, I don't know why. Is anything legitimate? I don't know. Is there any meritocracy? What would the meritocracy be? I'm not sure what it would be. I mean, we all look at something like the world of acting or entertainment like that, and we all know we don't necessarily think of, the most talented people made. I know when I was writing songs, trying to do that when I was very young, before I started writing anything else, I met lots of people that were incredibly talented. I would try to peddle my songs to them, and they never got record contracts. And then you look at some of the people that do, it's like, what? Daryl Wheeler says, please tell us how you got Riley. Have I told this story before? Well, I mean, again, my daughter wanted a dog, and we had, apparently we have some intelligent dogs too, because the first dog we had was a border collie, a Sheltie named Dino. Of course, I had to name him after, because my parents would not let me have a dog they would let me have pets. I wanted a dog so bad when I was little, that just was not going to happen. So I said, I've got to get a dog, when I'm on my own. So I had to have a dog, and I always loved Lassie, so I wanted that look, and I thought, but I kind of like the miniature Lassies, the border collies. So I got a dog, and of course I named him Dino. So Dino was cool, and I just didn't found out it was on Jeff Rent's last Monday. We were talking about intelligence, IQs and stuff, and apparently border collies have the highest intelligence of any dog, and golden retrievers, Riley's a golden retriever, fifth month intelligence is pretty good, the top 10. So we had after that we had well, that was before. No, the kids actually they saw Dino when they were little, but then we had a dog, TJ, who was just a really good looking mutt. I don't know what kind of mixture, but he had some golden retriever, a Labrador, maybe Beagle or Cocker Spaniel. I don't know, but he looked really good. He was a good looking dog. So we had him for a while, and then after he died, my daughter wanted to get a dog, and so she, and she knows how who feeds Riley, Deborah. 90% of the time it's me. Okay, sometimes my wife. 90% of the time it's me, but so she wanted to get a dog, and I told her I'm very superficial, and both the dogs we had, were good-looking dogs. I admit it. I'm not going to want a bulldog or a pit bull or a little chihuahua or something. I don't. I want good-looking dogs. So to me, golden retrievers now, I think they're the super. I call her my supermodel. She is. So it took a long time because we both wanted to try to rescue one if we could, but there are no golden retrievers that need rescuing. And every one we saw was a pit bull or pit bull mixture. So I said I've got to have an animal I can look at that I like. And plus I knew golden retrievers were good dogs, good natured dogs, and smart. So we eventually got it from a breeder, and Riley was the runt of the litter. She was the smallest one, and so she's 52 pounds. She's small for a golden retriever. She's just the right size, though. So we got her, and of course, never looked back since then. She's taken over her life, and she's hovering around now. She hears me talking about her, so she knows she has fans. So that's pretty cool. And so that's the story of Riley. But Riley's 12 now, so I can do the math, and she hasn't slowed down too much, but she's showing some signs of aging. But Karen says John Nieams is a very talented singer. He had some great truther songs. He lives in pianist. I haven't heard of him, Karen, but there's a lot of people I haven't heard. There's so many talent there. There was we used to go to this place in Old Town Alexandria where there's this woman and her piano player, and she used to just she was an older lady, but she'd do these ribald songs where she'd sing like "Roll Me Over in the Hay, Do It Again," so just kind of play on words. But she was great. The piano player was great. I don't know, had to be there, I guess. But I saw lots of people like that. I saw lots of really talented people, and I'd walk up to them and afterwards and talk to them in the bars, and sometimes we'd get together and I'd play my songs for them, and sometimes they were interested, but I used to think, and then I'd see some of these groups and say, how did they get a huge recording contract? So I know that that there are much more. These are not the most talented people, and that was then. That was when rock and roll was king. Now I don't with rap. I mean, who can't rap? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous. So how do they even determine who makes it there? I think you probably do have to sell your soul. Karen cooks her dog's face. Well, and I should say Deborah Riley is obviously, she much prefers human food, obviously. So she drives us crazy now. And so we have to end up giving her some of what we have. Anything I eat now, she's going to run up and demand some. So that's the story of Riley. So, but she's obviously at the center of my life, and she must be I Protest's biggest fan because she's always down here with the front row seat. No one else is in the studio but her. So certainly, it's been a pleasure. So, like I said, I was one of the kids. I loved animals, and I couldn't have pets as a kid. I still think I missed out on something because I think it's probably something special about having a dog when you're. I used to, envy the boys that would walk around. In those days, you didn't have leash laws that would walk around and their dog, and they'd have a cool dog next to them. And, why can't I have a cool dog? But didn't happen till later. But Dino was so obedient. I didn't put him on a leash. And it's 90. That's how much things have changed. And he would never bite anybody. But we would take him out, and the kids. We lived in these townhouses, and we had like a private park there. It was a public park, but it was like our neighborhood park, and so the kids had the townhouse was tiny, but they had so many places to play. It was really great. It was great for the dog too, and so he would go out with us, and we'd spend the hours out there, and he would just go off and do his thing. And I just say, hey, come on, Dino. And he'd come, unlike a certain dog I'm looking at now, who won't come when I call her ever, but he would come right away. We'd go back, and so he was great about that. But at any rate, so I appreciate all the people in the chat. See if I missed anything. Petal through Don's wife is probably shy and introvert. Yeah, you're exactly right, Petal. She is. She is. You're right. She can't get a word in edgewise. No, I think opposites attract. I don't know. If you have two talkers together too much, yeah, it doesn't. If one of you has to be a listener. Although I think I'm a pretty good listener. I think really, when I stop talking for them, my daughter says all the time, "God, you never." I mean, I talk to myself sometimes. Yeah, I do, and I remember I could relate to that episode of Dick Van Dyke when he was walking around talking to himself, and he did it all the time, and he'd say like, "You don't have to worry unless you start answering yourself." Which I think I've done that too as well, but so. At any rate, we've gone over. God, how many different subjects have we gone over here today? But I want to say, just that a few of the disturbing things I saw about Trump is that before I got on the show, where he kind of went off and everything else, is that apparently he came up with this thing where this is Trumpenstein, where he talked about he would be able to end the Ukraine war in the first day or something like that. Now he's saying no, that was just said in jest. You're saying Mr. Chuck, I was like, what? He says such dumb stuff that it's beyond belief. And apparently he's now where they're targeting these terrorists or alleged terrorists, gang members, which again is very, very much like terrorists. It's like, okay, is anybody named Jose? Is he an MS-13 gang member? It's a civil libertarian, it's concerning. But they're saying that they don't even have to have a warrant necessarily to search people's homes of suspected gang members. Again, you know how I feel about that. So, unfortunately, it hasn't worked out that way. But somebody mentioned RFK, and I know Kat Goya, who just had a birthday she's still holding strong with RFK Jr., and I want to believe too. I've heard some things lately. Maybe he's doing something. I don't know. I hope so, but I think he's the only hope there. But I think ultimately we have to be our own change in terms as far as we can. Try to be as good. I believe you try to be a good person yourself. You set an example and try to it's like a lot of these people. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect. I'm very flawed, but they're not gonna if I ever became big on the world stage or something, they're not going to really find skeletons in my closet. First of all, because I'm an open book, I talk about almost everything, so I don't have any great crimes to hide, and I don't have this exciting illicit lifestyle in private or whatever. So I think that it's important to do that, but it also pretty much ensures you probably will never rise to prominence because they purposely pick out those people, I'm convinced, because you can't have that many pedophiles and stuff that just has to, Pebble said he had a horse run in his car. Wow, we had a deer once, but I think that they have these many people that are that perverted and that weird in public office, and it gets exposed. And what are the odds of that? But if they're picked because of that, as Jason Whitlock says, they're installed, then I think more and more of these people are installed. And when you see a lot of them, whether on television or anywhere, and you say, how did they get their position? Who couldn't do that job? I remember in the Unreal, there was back then, even as a young person, I was writing about, who couldn't do. I was talking about things like rock critic, as an aspiring musician songwriter back then. I was like, who couldn't review records? You're just giving an opinion. The same thing as far as a film critic. Who you're just watching. Talk about the easiest job, or how about wine taster, or food critic, restaurant critic. Imagine. Can you think of a better job than that if you like to eat? Going to restaurants for free, eating for free, and just giving your opinion on the food. Those are the kind of things I talk about. These are the kind of jobs, and those jobs paid well. Much better than the common riffraff. So again, I think they are. Duke says they're all puppets. Yeah, well, they are. That's the Keith Spencer said. I think Trump lost in court when he sued the NFL and gave him $1. I think. Yeah, well, Trump loses a lot. That's what I said. The ultimate punchline to the Trumpet Sign Project is that Trump always loses. He never wins, and yet he's constantly, and his people think that he's winning. Because I run into it all the time. They talk about all these great wins. I said, what are you talking about? What has Trump won? What winning has he done? But they think he's winning, and they think they're winning. And that may be the saddest part of all, that people think that. But and those are the awake people. Duke says, do we think all under Admiral Maritime Law? I hear people talk about that. It goes back to 1870 or something. I don't really even understand that. I know we're under tyranny. I know we're under that. What are my thoughts on Napoleon? Duke, I'm glad you're here. You got a lot of good questions. Napoleon was he invented the little person complex, didn't he? Was he a Rothschild puppet? Probably. Back then they seemed to have run everything even then. So he certainly wanted to be an emperor. So I can't really have much affinity for somebody that has that kind of ambition. But again, I have to admit, I don't, other than I study a lot of English history because, I have a lot of English in me, and English literature especially fascinates me. I used to read a lot of it, and Dickens, the Romantic poets and stuff. But other than that, I concentrate on Americana, and I just think there's enough here to keep me interested, and I don't know enough about the rest of the world to be an expert on it. And Duke says, oh, he was an average height. Well, okay, you're right. People were a lot shorter back then. Well, I didn't know that, so I've learned something from you. But they call the Napoleon complex, I guess, because he was such a powerful figure. Yeah, maybe taller than James Madison. I think James Madison was 5'4" or something like that. He was our shortest president. So maybe he had a complex too. I don't know. But again, I appreciate we're just about out of time. Check room one more time. I appreciate all the questions over there, Pedal 31. Thanks everybody that was listening and watching and Rumble. And again, 5'6", Duke says he was that. I didn't know he was that tall. I figured he was 5 feet tall or something. Well, I've learned something. Learn something new every day. Oh, thank you, Geese Busters. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So this is probably the way I'm going to do it most of the time because you guys seem to like it better. Just having me talk, and especially as long as I have plenty of people in the chat room like today, and you guys I'm feeding off of you. You're asking me questions or bringing up subjects for me to comment on. That's easier because I can talk about anything, and I like talking about a lot of different stuff. I will do that, Duke. Thank you. So thanks everybody in the chat room. I pretty much called all you out, I think, and you can listen here in the same places tomorrow at 12 noon for America Unplugged with Billy Ray and Tony. Ryan says, get on Anthony Cumia's new AM show Sunday. Well, I'd like to, suggest it. You guys always suggest me as a guest to these people. Who knows? Maybe they'll listen, but I go on anybody who asks me. So I certainly, I think that guy's pretty good. But anyhow, so thanks. It's just about time to leave here. I hope all of you had a good Easter. We didn't even talk about that. And take care. It's a crazy world out there. Keep the faith. And I thank everybody for listening to I Protest, and we'll talk to you next week, same time, same channel. Take care.